Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we are doing another manga review. Now today we will be reviewing The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. Now we're going to cover volumes 1, 2, and 3. Now this is the manga, not the light novel. I will be buying the light novel in the next couple days if I haven't already bought it by the time this comes out. But I wanted to review this before I sold it off to, fund other things that I want to buy, and because I don't want to have both the manga and the light novel for Haruhi Suzumiya, because I don't think I will like it that much. So yeah, now Haruhi Suzumiya is written by Nagaru Tanigawa, right? Let me double check that. Yeah, Nagaru Tanigawa. And this manga is illustrated by Gaku Sugano, but the original character art is made by Noisy Ito. This is published by Yen Press, and these versions I think are rather old because they still have that Kadokawa logo that most Yen Press things that I own now don't have. But I'm not sure if that's because this is manga and most of what I own from Yen Press is light novels, or what the situation is with that. So yeah, now the demographic here is shonen according to Wikipedia, and the genres also according to Wikipedia are comedy and sci-fi. Now this manga is an adaptation of the light novel, and there's also an anime as far as I know, but I have no clue if it's any good. But I think I've heard from other anitubers or anime YouTubers that it is pretty good. So keep that in mind. Now the premise here is basically that this girl by the name of Haruhi wants to find the extraordinary, the supernatural. She wants to figure out if there's aliens and androids and robots and time travel and everything like that, because she wants to live an extraordinary life. She's bored of everyone being so basic, and she wants to find these things. And along her search or her adventure to find these things, she ends up pulling in other people into her adventure. Specifically Kion, which is the main, he's not the protagonist, but because I think the story is about Haruhi, not about Kion, but he's the character through which we see this world. So I guess he is, in that sense, the main character, although you could really call him the narrator as well. And 3 other students as well that all turn out to be what she's looking for, but she can't know about it. So that's actually a very interesting premise and a very interesting story to tell and to kind of devise and see how it happens. And I actually quite enjoyed reading this, but not as much as everyone seems to think it's the greatest thing ever. So the plotline here is basically a very slice of life style story, where each chapter or two focuses on a specific adventure or a specific situation that occurs, and they're somewhat unrelated to each other. They're all tied together chronologically, so the first story happens before the second one and so on, but you could really read each one of them individually after the first one, or after all the characters are introduced, because it doesn't really end up mattering that much that you know what happened before. I mean, I guess it kind of does, but I don't necessarily think that it matters all that much. So yeah, that was difficult to explain, but basically it's chronologically ordered, but it's each story is kind of in its own little pocket. It's relatively separate from the stories before or after. And in the manga specifically, everyone is basically introduced in the first volume by the 4th chapter, I think, which is the first 100 pages. And then after that, it just is a bunch of adventures or situations that occur. And basically, it's all done to keep Haruhi happy and busy because, there's plotline elements and character elements and world building elements that all tie in with Haruhi that basically requires her to be happy, otherwise bad things happen. And it's very interesting. I really enjoyed this. It's all pretty comedic and really fun and really easy to read. But I did have the sense that some of the stories were dragging on a little bit. And I think that's because of the manga adaptation, not necessarily how the story is structured. I just feel like what was happening wasn't like enough per like page. So it felt kind of slow even though there was a lot of text to read. And so I'm not exactly sure why that happened. And hopefully I don't have the same experience with the light novel, but I do think it was because it was transferred from light novel to manga. If that is true, I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know in the review for the light novel. Now, the characters here are good. I really enjoy all of them to an extent. I think there's only one character that I don't really particularly care for, but we'll talk about him when we get there. Now, Haruhi is really interesting. She's rather amazing in the way that she's written and characterized, but she's also kind of frustrating because she's kind of annoying that she doesn't take anyone's feelings into account. She just does whatever she wants, and she expects you to go along with her. And I think that's a very interesting character to enjoy from afar or to see in a story, but it's not someone that I would want to interact with in real life. And so it's kind of interesting in that way because I really like her because she's quirky and weird and funny, but interacting with someone like her would drive me nuts. But it's very cool. I really kind of enjoy that. It's a very interesting feeling created by her character. So that's pretty cool. Besides her, Kion he's not very interesting, but he is kind of meaningful because he's a normal person, but he's still key to Haruhi's story, and I really like that. It kind of has this feeling of anyone can be meaningful to someone and you wouldn't know, but it's true, right? It's a very complex idea, but I really like it because it is pretty meaningful. Like I said earlier, he basically functions as both the narrator and one of the characters in the story, but I still think that Haruhi is the main character, even though she's not the main point of view, if that kind of makes sense. And then there's three secondary characters. There's Yuki Nagato, who is basically a kudere, I think is what it's called. Basically someone that's really emotionless, but she kind of is going through a kind of transformation. She's one of the things that Haruhi is looking for, and I won't tell you which because that's part of the fun. But I really enjoy the kind of change that she's going through very, very slowly, and I'm excited to see how that changes. Probably this won't end up being like a harem series. I'm not actually sure, but I could definitely see, 2 or 3 female interest in Kion, but I think that this is not really, it doesn't really fit. Then we have Mikuku Asahina, who's kind of a ditzy character. She's the second person to join the SOS Brigade after Yuki. And she's interesting, but I think she functions more as a fan service character, sprinkle in a little bit of exposition, and just kind of add a love interest that kind of messes with the main interest between Kion and Haruhi. And she's really not that bad, but I don't necessarily know that she brings anything all that interesting to the table. And the last character is Itsuki Koizumi. Now, he definitely brings something to the table, but his character is just so boring, and I don't really find anything about him interesting or meaningful. And it kind of is weird because Kion is about the same level as unoriginal as him, but he's not as bothersome, I guess. But I guess it's because he's the narrator and he makes a little more sense to be kind of unoriginal, because it's a everyman situation where you can, as a reader, you can identify with him easily, and then through identifying with him you become part of the story, which is understandable. But this Itsuki guy, I just don't enjoy him, and the story stuff that he brings to the table is interesting, but him as a character is rather boring, and I just don't like it. Now, the world building here is pretty good. The sci-fi stuff is pretty nicely done, but it is minimal sci-fi. It's in the sense of like, hey, this stuff happens. We don't really care why it happens or need that much explanations. Just make sure that, hey, it probably happens the way you think it happens, and that's that, which is okay. I mean, it's definitely a very low sci-fi setting. It's not like, you know, modern sci-fi, which is really hard, and it's all about making sure that the science is as likely to happen as possible. It's not really like pulp fantasy era fiction, science fiction either, where it was all about like just making it work. It's somewhere in between. The sci-fi elements are like plausible to an extent, but they don't really go into why they are plausible. So that's basically it. I mean, it's not really all that meaningful. So it basically small bits here and there, but it's not generally much, so it doesn't really matter all that much beyond the bit that they tell you, and then it's okay. You don't really have to think about it. Now, the art here is okay. It's not bad. I mean, I think it's definitely an older style. The characters look pretty pointed and sharp characteristics-wise. Like, their faces are very angular, very square and pointy at the chin. But it doesn't look bad. It's just not a preferred style of mine, so that's basically it for that. Now, the fan service. There's not really any fan service that's really all that bad. I mean, in Volume 1, they dress up as bunny girls for a little bit, and in Volume 2 or 3, there's like some boob jokes, but that's basically it. It's very minimal. It's not anything crazy. If you're like 14, you'll like maybe like it, but other than that, you probably won't really care. So it doesn't, you know, it's not bad. So if you're someone that doesn't like fan service, I would consider this to be still okay. But you know, if you're completely against it, don't read this, just in case. And rating wise, I don't know. I think this is a very solid up, like high tier 3 or a low 4, somewhere around that area, because the concept is interesting and the way that the characters develop is interesting, but I just felt like nothing really happened after 3 volumes. Like, I don't know, I didn't think that there was enough there to be like, oh yeah, this was amazing or anything like that. And I understand that this is a really long running series. I think there's like 12 books or 12 light novels. So I understand that I probably only got like half of the first book. But even then, there should be something interesting, and nothing really captivated me. So solid, like a 3.8, 3.75, hitting that 4 mark where it's like pretty good, but there wasn't anything all that special about it, you know, kind of there. I don't know what that ends up being in a number, but around that area. So there we go. Now, that's basically it. I recommend this if you are a fan or you want to try it out, because I'm pretty sure these are old, and I think they're like collector's items at this point, but they're not that expensive for collector's items, and the light novel and the anime should be pretty accessible now that the light novel is being reprinted, so you can read it that way. Similar titles though, I don't know. Okay, I think I know some, but I can't really say that I would recommend them because I haven't read them. So, as far as I understand it, Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai is supposed to be more or less along the same lines as Haruhi Suzumiya. If that is true or not, I don't know. If someone in the comments could tell me, that would be pretty appreciated, but that's the best thing that I can come up with, like, for this section. So I really can't help you find any similar titles if you enjoyed this. Sorry. That's basically it though. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Thank you guys once again, And hope to see you guys in the next video. See you guys later.